All right, folks, we're going to jump in and get started. Welcome to the second of many this year of XenTegra's Webinar Wednesdays. Today, the topic is going to be focused on VMware Horizon Cloud. Folks, we're going to jump in and get started. And sorry about that. We're going to be focused on VMware Horizon Cloud and strategies to adopt and why. And I got a good friend of mine and a longtime end user compute evangelist on with me today, and I'm excited to have him on. My name is Pete Downing. I'm the CMTO of XenTegra and host of XenTegra Webinar Wednesdays, and I'd like to introduce and welcome my friend Gabe Knuth. And Gabe, if you want to give yourself a quick intro and a little history on your many years in the end user compute space.
my many years in the end user computing space. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Pete. So my name's Gabe Knuth. I am currently a product marketing manager at VMware. I focus on Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure, but I'm also kind of in touch with all the other Horizon happenings. I joined VMware after working at Microsoft for a little while. I was acquired into there because I was at FS Logics. So I have some fond memories of working for FS Logics for a while. And then that whole transition period was pretty interesting too. And prior to that, I spent, 12 years, something like that, as a blogger and analyst and speaker and stuff at brianmadden.com. And so, that my life, my EUC life has kind of spanned all sorts of different roles. Prior to that, I was in-house IT. I was consultant. I have a technical background that has kept me in touch with what users are actually experiencing on a day-to-day basis for the entire time. Like I like to say, since the 1900s. And so I'm just an EUC lifer. I really, if you had to pick, one phrase to describe me, it would be EUC lifer.
Nice. And I met you, Christ, it's been a long time now.
You were for Ardence. So
yeah, it's got to be
was a thing.
Yeah, 2005-ish, I think it was. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
All right. And then also behind the scenes, we got two other guests. Eric, if you want to give yourself a quick intro, I know you're on there, so welcome.
Thank you. I'm Eric Collette, VMware Partner Solutions Architect, and I'm supporting the EUC space. I'm kind of lingering in the background and helping wherever I can. I'll pitch in whatever comments I can on this. But it's good to meet all of you, and well, it's good to be here, Pete. Thank you, and I'm glad to share a spotlight with Gabe.
Yeah, welcome. And then another gentleman behind the scenes, Michael. If you want to give yourself a quick intro, your second one in about a month now, so welcome back.
That's right. Thank you, Pete. Michael Kowalski with VMware. I manage our EUC partner practice development and closely aligned to our top partners, XenTegra. Really excited for today's conversation, and thanks for having us, Pete.
Cool. And then thanks for joining. And then last but not least, Megan, if you want to just say hello, and everybody be nice to Megan. We get our Uber stuff out the door as fast as we can. So welcome, Megan.
Thanks, Pete. Hey guys, it's good to see everybody returning, and as well as the new faces or new names. So I look forward to today's session.
All right. So thanks, panelists, for joining. And again, if you guys have question and answers, please do ask. We have the Q&A dialogue. And the cool thing about the Q&A dialogue in Zoom that I like is if you ask a question, you can do it anonymously. So if you're afraid to know who you are, that's okay. We won't judge here. And then finally, if you're an attendee and you want to upvote it or you want to comment, you can. So then you don't have to feel like you have to ask a question all over again. So that's a really cool feature of Zoom that I like. You can always chat up panelists if you want as well, and we definitely encourage it. Our agenda is simple. We're going to go through a quick round of polls. You guys know I like polling and getting some good data, but also I'm going to hand the baton over to Gabe and let him explain what is VMware Horizon Cloud and how does it fit. And then we're going to have a little conversation as we go through the day today. But I encourage questions, because then that will have us a conversation that's honed in around you guys. All right, if you haven't already, check out webinars.xentegra.com. I got a great listing of partners that are going to be joining me. Next week, I got XenTegra joining me. So if you're interested on hearing what MDR is and and how that fits into the whole fold of end user compute, et cetera. Definitely jump on that next week. And then beyond that, I got a lot of great guests coming on. Events.XenTegra.com if you're interested. I'm doing an Azure fundamentals class tomorrow. I'm doing an Agile workshop on Friday. I'm staying pretty busy right now. This is my crazy week. So events.XenTegra.com. And then finally, podcast. So every week, Andy, our founder and CEO, does a podcast that's focused on VMware, Nutanix, a lot of the folks in the space. And he tries to hone it in on, the various partners in the space. And we do one dedicated to VMware. So definitely check that out. And then, yes, everybody who attends today will get an Uber Eats credit. And please read the email. There's criteria that has to be met. I'm not just going to hand it out to folks that give us a Gmail or Yahoo. So please be nice to Megan when she asks you for your business email. And then finally, we're giving away an iPhone and or a Samsung, whatever your pick is. And then I got some other cool swag I'll be giving out to various attendees over the next month. And then finally, I'll talk about this later, bronco.XenTegra.com and how it fits with VMware. But we got a great way you can get yourself into a drawing and get some good food for thought when it comes to VMware in your environments today. All right, so my fun part of the segment, I like to get some polling and get some data in here. So I'm going to bring up my polls. And the first poll is just to get you guys warmed up. Just give me some makeup on who's out there today. So is this your first XenTegra event / workshop? And, if you've attended past events, say you've attended. If you haven't, say this is your first one. And then give us a, roundabout, what's your role? I could make this list a mile long. I just try to keep it simple. If you're the day-to-day person that does the work, you're a decision maker, you're kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, a consultant, or a partner. And that just gives us some good data on who's out in the crowd today. I'll give you guys a couple more seconds to answer. I'd like to get at least 60+%, just to keep the stats relevant. All right, going once, going twice, saying last call. All right, so we got a lot of new folks out there. So welcome. Hopefully you enjoy the session today. And then for those returning, as always, thank you for coming back every week. We try to keep these as fun as possible. And yes, I run these every week, minus a couple holiday weeks and the 1 week I might actually go on vacation. So, and then, we got a great spread of different folks out there today, but we do try to keep the content relevant to all. All right, let's talk about EUC. So let's gather some information on the EUC environment. And I'm going to launch the poll. And I know on my second question, I'm missing one key vendor and I forgot to correct it. So I apologize, but I forgot to put Nutanix in there. But the first question is, hey, what's your primary end user compute product? So are you hopefully using VMware or are you using another vendor? What is your primary hypervisor platform? So pick the one that you're primarily using in your enterprise today. Are you a Citrix Cloud Workspace customer? Again, just to get some data behind this. And then finally, what is VMware Horizon Cloud? And we'll see what answer Gabe gives us in a little bit. Like, is it a platform as a service, a software as a service, infrastructure as a service? I think we could have a long debate about that one, right, Gabe?
You didn't tell me that question was coming.
It's the eye of the beholder, right?
Desktops as a service.
Yeah. All right, so a couple more seconds. At least try to get 60% or more. I like the way that Zoom does polling because it allows me to kind of bundle them all together and not have them do them one at a time. So it allows me to get the polls and get answers. All right, last call for clicks. Going once, twice, and last call. So here, we'll share the results. So we got a lot of, it's kind of really close tie here, close, but we got a lot of Citrix customers out there, which I expected. And that's a fun little anecdote for us to talk about. As expected, VMware, ESXi, vSphere, vCenter is the king of the platforms. That's been a thing since you and I started, Gabe. I mean, back in the day, even when Citrix started out with Xen Server, VMware was kind of king of the hypervisors. Pretty good cut, snippet of information here for the Citrix Cloud. And then finally, a little fun answer. Is it platform, software, or infrastructure? So we'll talk about that a little later and have a little fun with that. All right. let's talk about industry stuff. And this is where it gets a little fun because it plays into some of the WVD conversation we're gonna have a little later as well. My enterprise is using Azure AD today. Are you doing just cloud only identity, or you're doing hybrid? Are you using or evaluating an infrastructure as a compute service today? So are you a AWS shop? Are you an Azure shop? Pick your primary. I know you could do all the above. What's your M365 model look like? Are you Exchange on-prem, hybrid, Exchange online? Hey, you're considering it. It's not even on your radar. Hey, I'm a Google Chrome Enterprise shop. What's your remote work strategy look like? And then finally, the last two, what's your thin devices? Do you use thin devices in production today? And Gabe, I don't know if you saw, Agile made an interesting announcement today. They're supporting ARM devices now. And they're partnering.
I didn't see that. Cool.
Yeah, they're partnering with NCompute. So for those who are on late breaking, I'm doing a session on this later this month about it. So
is this like Agile OS runs on Raspberry Pis? Is that the lead?
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. And then finally, WVD. Are you testing it? You want to pilot it? And if you want to pilot it, don't go spend your own money. Wait till I reach out to you and know what is WVD. We can maybe get to that if we have time, but we can, definitely join me and we can focus on that. So last call for clicks, going once. I'm going to drag my feet on this one twice. Come on, folks, click away. And last call. All right. So we got a lot of good data here. It's interesting. This is the closest I've seen Amazon and Microsoft and all the polling I've done over the recent weeks and months. Usually it's like Microsoft Azure blowing everybody out of the water. So it's kind of interesting. And then we got, typically I see from an M365, it's interesting. Yeah, I get this conundrum of Exchange on-prem with online, and you can probably guess why, because you used to work at FS Logics. But that's a big conversation I tend to have. Mm-hmm. The remote work thing is interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see if we can get out of this pandemic. It seems like Groundhog Day, but it'll be interesting to see how remote work evolves even into 2022 now, and then a pretty good spread of devices, but not a lot of people using thin devices in production. That's a conversation maybe for another day. And then 20% of folks are currently testing WVD. So I'm glad that's the case, but we can talk about the pros and cons of WVD, Azure, et cetera.
So real quick though, because that's an interesting thing to me too, that the fact that not that many people are using thin clients. Do you have a sense as to why? Is it like a Microsoft licensing thing where the primary device has to be under an enterprise agreement, so you get the VDA license, or?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
I never thought about it from a licensing perspective. I think it's more of a
management and
it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality.
Yeah, that could be too. That's interesting.
Yeah. Good. So some good data there. And glad everybody partook. So thank you for taking time to have some fun and take the polls. So, all right, so let's just before we jump in, and I'm going to pass the baton over to Gabe in a second. If you're not following VMware, XenTegra, myself, Gabe, on social media, please do. We put a lot of good information out there. I'm going to do another shout out to another guy named Christian Brinkhoff, who does a lot of great stuff on the WVD front. So if you're not following him, definitely give him a follow. But
also
a lot of
great FS Logics guy.
Yeah, and a lot of great content. And that's what the goal here is, to get you guys good content and linked into great information. So, all right, without further ado, Gabe, if you want to take control of the screen and talk about, VMware Horizon Cloud. And I think for the audience, let's level set on what it is and, assume that they don't know, and then we'll jump in. And again, audience, I encourage question and answer. So please do ask questions. So
for sure. And let's see, can I keep the Q&A up? I think I can, but yeah, Pete, if you don't mind keeping an eye on that, just interrupt me if stuff comes in that's relevant to what we're talking about. So this is Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure is pretty much what I spend most of my day doing. It's really everything VMware does with regards to desktop virtualization and Microsoft Azure. Of course, VMware EUC is quite a bit larger than just that, right? We have the rest of VMware Horizon. We've got some other things as well that I'll touch on just briefly. But the thing I want to start with is just from a desktop virtualization perspective. Pete, this kind of goes with what your last poll question was there with regards to how people anticipate work from home, how many end users they think will be working from home for the foreseeable future. This survey is one that we did actually in November of 2019. And I still have it because I still think it's really interesting to see how many customers, we pulled VMware's Horizon customers and asked them whether they thought hybrid, multi-cloud, and cloud-hosted managed as a service capabilities were important in a desktop virtualization platform. And 91% of the people that responded said that hybrid was a must-have or nice-to-have feature. 77% said that multi-cloud was a must-have or nice-to-have feature. And you see 82% said some sort of cloud-hosted managed as a service was important to them. And the way we break down hybrid and multi-cloud is basically hybrid is on-premises and so having a desktop virtualization environment on premises and one in a public cloud somewhere. So having workloads in both locations. Multi-cloud might be hybrid, but also involves multiple different public clouds. So maybe I've got resources in Azure and in AWS or IBM or something along those lines. Then cloud hosted managed as a service is definitely more like DaaS, where we're Horizon Cloud, where we manage the Horizon infrastructure and things. And this information was encouraging to us back in November 2019. But then it's even more poignant today because this is pre-COVID. So I imagine this is just all maxed out dark blue. Maybe not cloud hosted managed as a service, but the world certainly desires desktop virtualization in flexible ways more so today than they ever have in the past. What I think is pretty cool is that, like I said before, I'm an EUC lifer. I have been focused on doing this stuff since it was called terminal servers, right? And and again, like the 1900s. And so it's this carved out little niche of IT that we've been existing in forever. I think it's a shame that we're in this position, broadly speaking, but I'm happy that the desktop virtualization was up to the challenge when the world needed it. And that now, people can see how useful this technology can be. But it doesn't come without issues, right? There's plenty of organizations that had virtual desktops deployed on premises, but didn't have enough capacity to handle all of their users using it at the same time. Maybe they only deployed desktop virtualization for 20% of their users. And now with COVID, 80% of the users have to work from home. And we can only cut so many corners with our existing environment, shaving off memory or vCPUs or things like that to accommodate more users, maybe removing our N+1 redundancy by maxing out all of our hosts and things like that before we simply just run out of capacity. And so many, many customers have expanded their on-premises desktop virtualization environments out to the public cloud as well. And we've had some really impressive customers that we've worked with over the past year, I guess now. Most notably is, and all of these are the same. All of these projects that you see on the screen, it's all COVID reaction, business continuity, that kind of thing. But the large insurance firm on the left, this insurance company came to us in mid-March and said, we have 35,000 insurance agents. They all worked from an office with physical desktops. We can't have them go to the office anymore. We have to send them home, and we have no way of doing that. And so we, together with Microsoft and a partner and the customer, worked together. It took about a week of preliminary or prerequisite collection time by the time we were able to actually deploy this. And once we had all that done in 1 week, in 5 days, we were able to deploy 35,000 virtual desktops in Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure. And this company can now use their Windows Virtual Desktop entitlement as well. And so we saw this over and over again. Imagine trying to deploy an on-premises desktop virtualization solution as a reaction to a lockdown. you couldn't acquire 35,000 users worth of desktop hardware and infrastructure in 5 days. You couldn't rack it, stack it, power it, cool it, provision it, deploy it. You couldn't hope to do that. That process takes months from start to finish, not just days. And so a lot of our customers have gone this route and seen that using the cloud, at least for this sort of period as a reaction, has been very valuable. And now they're evaluating whether or not they want to continue moving resources to the cloud, or to continue operating in a hybrid way where there's some resources on-prem and in the cloud, or to pull back and just use on-premises again. And there's lots of different customers at each kind of stage of that process. Everybody's different in how they're proceeding. But in a lot of ways, we're just putting the application closest to the data that the application needs, which takes us all the way back to 1999 again, where the whole point of desktop virtualization in the first place, when we first got into this, right, Pete, where we just wanted to put the workload next to the data, and we've come full circle. That's what we're doing now. So if the data is in the cloud, we're putting the workload in the cloud, and if the data is on premises, we're putting the workload on premises.
Yeah, it's true. Yep.
So with that in mind, that idea plus this feedback from our customers that hybrid and multi-cloud and things like that are important to them has led VMware to develop this hybrid and multi-cloud vision. And our plan, our whole platform has been built around this Horizon control plane that you see in the center, and its ability to deploy and manage desktop virtualization environments in any of these clouds that you see, and to provide the same set of features across environments running on all these platforms. Now, there are some things that are specific to certain platforms. For example, VMware has instant clones, which provisions desktops in a snap of the fingers in vSphere, VMware ESX environments. Horizon Cloud and Microsoft Azure runs on native Azure capacities. So that's not vSphere. So that can't have instant clones, right? So I don't want anybody to say, well, that's not true. You don't have all the features everywhere. Sometimes they just don't apply. Sometimes we're still building these things out. But this is our goal, is to deploy universal brokering, image management, application management through VMware App Volumes, dynamic environment manager, which is our word for user environment management, monitoring, lifecycle management, protocols, all of those things from one control plane, all managed from a single pane of glass, no matter where those virtual desktops and applications are running. That is a small portion of what VMware EUC is all about. I mentioned this before. I just wanted to point it out. VMware has their unified endpoint management, which, by the way, is why we had to rename our user environment manager to dynamic environment manager. Unified endpoint management is VMware Workspace ONE. That's device management, iPhones and rugged devices and laptops and all of these things. That's our zero trust. There's security involved with that. Desktop virtualization obviously is on the other side. That's what we're going to talk about. But in the center of this is employee experience, which is facilitated by VMware Workspace ONE Intelligent Hub, which adds password and identity management, mobile flows, linking applications and workflows and stuff together, people search, app catalog, and things like that. So this is the whole vision of VMware EUC.
So Gabe, do you think, just to throw kind of a fun question out there, do you think Carbon Black, where do you see that fitting in eventually? Because I think that's an important piece down the road, right? Especially as we go to BYO and unmanaged endpoints. And again, you asked the question about Thin, where IGIL is trying to make a big push is, hey, you can repurpose devices, whether temporary or permanent. But do you think Carbon Black will eventually fold into this story as well?
Yeah, for sure. And it already is. It's starting to fold in there. I'm looking to see if I have Carbon Black slides in here, and I don't. But we do have this concept of intrinsic security, where we've got security built in from down at the hypervisor level all the way through now to the desktops and applications themselves. And Carbon Black is obviously a big part of that. The Carbon Black does now work with virtual desktops and applications. That took a little bit of time. When we acquired them back in November of 2019, or VMworld, I guess I should say, of 2019. So we worked through things to make Carbon Black work with virtual desktops. And so, and we're rolling that out now. So it's like you say, it's a big part of this going forward, because the security problems aren't going away. Yeah.
Another thing to add to that is, I mean, the VMware tools is including a lot of those sensor arrays that
Good point.
Carbon Black is invested in. So we're going to see that distribute through the Horizon clients. We're going to see it distribute through all aspects of business, and all they have to do, they are just hooks that can be enabled and used. But those hooks will be there for Carbon Black and ready to use when somebody wants to enable them. So yeah, just following Gabe's point.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Feel free to jump in with deeper information like that anytime.
You got it.
Cool. And I'm waiting I'm going to guess you're going to throw up an architecture slide, because I actually have a good question once you do bring that up. So
yeah. What level of architecture slide do you want?
I know it's from the audience, but it's around the Horizon Cloud connector and in HA. So
okay, gotcha.
It can be deployed in HA mode. So
all right, cool. Well, okay. So so we talk about how Horizon can be deployed on all these platforms and managed with the Horizon control plane. A lot of times the next question that customers have, the next question we ask is, where would you like to have your desktops be, right? You know, in a lot of cases, customers come to us and they bring their cloud and say, we have these things on premises and we want to deploy them into Azure as well. And we say, cool, we can help with that. But sometimes the customers come to us, like in the case of the insurance company, and they're like, we need virtual desktops. Where do we put them? And so we show them, we start here instead, and we look at management responsibilities, because there's a lot of flexibility within Horizon and the ability to pick between all of these different locations. And with each one of them kind of comes a different set of responsibilities for who manages what. And so if we start on the far right side, Horizon 7, actually, this is an older slide. I should say just Horizon 8 or Horizon. But Horizon on premises is managed by the customer in its entirety. The customer has to acquire the hardware, the software-defined data center, the SDDC, that's the vSphere components and NSX and things like that. The customer also has to manage the Horizon infrastructure and the desktops and applications. So the entire stack is managed by the customer. But if you look at some of the other offerings we have, Horizon on VMC on AWS or Horizon on Azure VMware Solution, which is a Microsoft managed platform. It's basically vSphere as a service from Azure. In both of those situations, the underlying hardware and the software-defined data center components, the virtualization components, are managed by somebody else. And so the customer just has to manage the Horizon infrastructure and the desktops and applications. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time getting into these. If there are questions, we can dive in a little bit more. But this is really just to show a high-level picture of what's going on. And then on the far left, we have Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure. And in that situation, the hardware, the underlying hardware, is managed by Azure. There is no VMware software-defined data center, which is why that says not applicable. It's whatever is Azure's doing, which is Hyper-V or whatever the case may be. The Horizon infrastructure, in this case, in Horizon Cloud's case, is actually managed by VMware. We'll dig into this in a little bit. And the desktops and applications are the only thing that have to be managed by the customer. And so when looking at it via management responsibilities, we see that we have flavors of Horizon that can work with whatever your skill sets are in your company or whatever you want to get out of. If you don't want to be in the rat race anymore of maintaining hardware all the time and swapping that stuff out, cool. There are ways to avoid doing that and still deploy VMware Horizon. Architecturally speaking, Horizon 8 now is it looks like a typical traditional desktop virtualization platform, right? We've got connection servers and gateways and databases and licensing servers and things like that. Pretty typical stuff. It can connect to the Horizon control plane via the cloud connector. But there's customers that run them in both ways. This same architecture is used to deliver desktop or virtual desktops and applications from VMware Cloud on Amazon Web Services as well. In this case, though, instead of running on your hardware that you purchase and put in your data center, it's that same environment just running on AWS native capacity. and I have this note here just to make things clear. VMware Cloud is the platform that all of this is running on. So VMware Cloud is the vSphere as a service. It's not the same thing as Horizon Cloud. There is no Horizon Cloud on AWS, just to avoid confusion, although that sometimes makes it worse. But VMware Cloud is basically a pay-to-manage vSphere offering from VMware that runs on AWS, into which you can deploy any of your vSphere-based workloads. Similarly, Horizon Cloud or Microsoft Azure VMware solution works the same kind of way as our VMware Cloud on AWS. This is Horizon running in vSphere as a service that's delivered by Microsoft. The main stipulation here that's different, or that I want to point out, is that even though this is running in Microsoft Azure, it does not have the features and capabilities of Windows Virtual Desktop. And in order to get those, you need Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure. Pete, do you want to work that cloud connector question in now? Or I don't know if it'll come up organically or not, but it's a good point to work that in if you want.
Yeah. So the attendee's asking about, hey, how do you deploy the Horizon Cloud Connector in HA mode? And he explain how that works with Horizon Cloud. So I'm assuming that plays into this conversation right here.
So is this? I would like clarification on the question, and it is: do we mean multiple cloud connectors, like on premise or in the cloud, or how is the? I'd like the person Doug to clarify a little bit, but we can talk about it either way.
Gotcha. Well, and you know what? So and he had a follow up too. Like, can you explain or send a link to how to explain that, how to deploy this in HA mode, the Horizon Cloud Connector?
There it is.
Yeah. Eric, if you want to take a stab at that, that's great. If not, I'm going to deflect to our reference architecture on TechZone.
Well, the short answer is not now, but I would go to TechZone as well.
Gotcha.
On the same pod.
Oh, you
Do
see
you
that?
need that? Because honestly, so on the cloud, we assume that the cloud is not going down. It's going to have some sort of built-in high availability to keep that safe. I would say if it's in the same regional space, you don't want it there anyway. You want geographic separation. You want some sort of distribution.
What about on-prem?
On-premise and cloud would make sense as a combined configuration. However, I don't believe that is in there just yet. Again, I'll probably say refer to TechZone for deeper details on that one.
Gotcha. I'm going to put a link in the chat here. Can everybody see the chat? I think so. And
yeah.
Wait, I don't see. Oh, wait, hang on. I'm new. Computers are hard. Panelists and attendees. Okay, there's a link into the chat. This is to the reference architecture for Workspace ONE and Horizon that goes through everything. And so, Doug, hopefully the information you need is in there, because you got a marketing guy right here. So, yeah. Cool. Okay. Let's move on to a little bit more info about Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure. So this is only going to be up here briefly. I'm not going to go through in exhausting detail the components that make up Horizon Cloud on Azure. I put this here mainly to show that it is fundamentally different than what we've got going on over here. In a more traditional Horizon environment. What really makes more sense here is to describe what's going on with Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure. All of these components are still necessary in a virtual desktop environment. The main difference here with Horizon Cloud on Azure is that the Horizon infrastructure components are deployed by VMware and managed by VMware in your Azure tenant. And so when you first deploy Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure, we collect your Azure information and we create the different resource groups. We build the different virtual machines that make up the pod manager and the unified access gateways and the load balancing service and the Azure Postgres database and things like that. All of that is configured automatically by VMware. As a customer, you're entering in your Active Directory information and filling in your vital data into the wizard that gets all of this set up. But once you've done that, all of it's set up automatically. From there, it's a matter of uploading or creating desktop images and then creating the assignments to your users. So that's why you don't have to deploy any of this stuff when it comes down to it. From a high level perspective, so this entire desktop virtualization infrastructure is deployed into your Microsoft Azure tenant. The Horizon control plane actually lives in a VMware managed tenant. And so that means that your Horizon pod that lives in your tenant will connect up to the Horizon control plane. And that's what lets you manage all of your Horizon environments on-prem or in the cloud. From that Horizon control plane, you can deploy and manage the virtual machines wherever they happen to be. And like I mentioned, Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure extends the capabilities of Windows Virtual Desktop from just native WVD into Horizon Cloud as well. So the way I kind of like to describe it is from an architectural kind of block diagram standpoint is Microsoft manages the storage and compute and the networking. VMware manages the Horizon control plane in a VMware hosted tenant. And VMware also manages the Horizon Cloud infrastructure deployed in your Azure subscription. And as a customer, you're left to manage the Horizon clients and the desktops and applications themselves. And because this is integrated with the Horizon control plane, that means you get multiple environment, hybrid management, monitoring. You have the universal broker that can route the workloads to wherever they happen to be. Application management via app volumes and user environment management via VMware Dynamic Environment Manager. So let's see. Go to this one because let's get to the Windows Virtual Desktopness of this thing. Most people like to ask if WVD runs in Horizon or if we, somehow they treat Windows Virtual Desktop as if it's some sort of thing that can be like integrated with with these other products. And the way I like to describe it is actually a little bit different. In reality, WVD is a platform that Microsoft created that includes some essential or unique features. Those features are like the unique features on here are Windows 10 Enterprise multi-session and Windows 7 with free extended security updates. This is built into your Microsoft Enterprise agreement, and there's special Azure pricing and things like that go along with this. But the most notable things are Windows 10 and Windows 7 support even after Windows 7 end of life last year. VMware has had Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure for, I think, going on 4 years now. And so this is a platform that we developed on our own. And when Microsoft announced WVD, we established a partnership with Microsoft that extends the capabilities of WVD to Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure. And so if you're a Horizon Cloud customer and you have the appropriate entitlements from your Microsoft Enterprise agreement, you just have the ability now to deliver Windows 10 Enterprise multi-session and pay the discounted Azure pricing and not have to buy any additional licenses because that's included with your enterprise agreement. WVD comes with its basic set of functionality that Microsoft keeps iterating through this and adding adding more GUI functionality and things like that. But it's still limited to WVD specifically, and so we like to show how VMware has their Horizon control plane or our Horizon control plane. We have all of these services that are part of it. And I'm going to take a little bit deeper of a dive into each one of these things and explain what they are a little bit later. The important thing here is that they add functionality above and beyond what native Windows Virtual Desktop has, except they also integrate with FSLogix. Because FSLogix became, when Microsoft acquired FSLogix, it became the de facto standard for things like profile, solving the problems that roaming profiles and folder redirection and Office data roaming and things like that created. It became the de facto standard for that. And so when you deploy when you use VMware Horizon, you can use Dynamic Environment Manager to add user environment management capabilities on top of that industry standard FS Logix kind of baseline. DEM includes things like privilege elevation, application policies and settings, things like that. Another way I like to visualize this is that WVD is a great way to get you started on your path towards modernizing the way you deliver virtual desktops and applications, or get you started on your cloud journey, or whatever the case is for why you are where you are and where you have to go. It does this by including licenses in your Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. It has Windows 10 multi-session, which means you can deliver a Windows 10 interface to your users, even though it's a multi-session environment. And this, for any of you, and I recognize some of the names in the attendees here. There's a lot of you on here that understand it when I say it doesn't matter if you put the user optimization, desktop optimization pack on a Windows server, it still feels weird somehow to your end users. You could put all the work in the world into that. It still feels weird. With Windows 10 Enterprise multi-session, you can deliver actual Windows 10 in a multi-session way to your end users. And that's a big deal. And then, like I said, there are discounted Azure prices when you use this in conjunction with your Windows Virtual Desktop pricing. Basically, since you've already paid Microsoft once, they're not charging you for Windows again in Azure. And so the price is discounted proportionately to that. But on top of kind of the basic stuff that Windows Virtual Desktop gets you, VMware adds extra capabilities that have very real tangible value. Most notably here are the removal of the need for third-party tools. You don't need to have you don't need to go buy additional application management capabilities or platforms because AppVolumes is built into VMware Horizon and the Horizon control plane. Dynamic Environment Manager is in there as well. There's monitoring built in. And all of these things add up to, we have very conservatively calculated $3 per month of value or savings for a customer. Hybrid support's also really important here. Kind of hard to put a value on this. It's one of those things where if you need it, you need it, right? It does mean that you can more quickly spin up workloads and you don't have to manage separate silos. And so that there's a lot of value to that, but it's hard without just inventing soft costs, it's really hard to put a real value on that. So we tried to stick to tangible things. Other cost optimizations can be realized through all of our management capabilities. There is advanced power management that makes sure that the resources that are spun up and that you're paying for more closely match the resources you actually need to have available to your end users right now. Yes, you can do script-based power management with native Windows Virtual Desktop, and depending upon how much of a scripting guru you are, you can probably fine-tune things. But this is built into the platform and applies across the board. You move some sliders around, take some boxes in the GUI, and you've got your power cost optimizations. There's also image management savings associated with this too. By using VMware App Volumes, that means that you don't have to have all the applications built into the base image. You can store them off separately, which means our base image size is reduced, which means we're paying for less storage on a machine by machine basis. And those and some other things all factor into this another $11 per month worth of savings. And last is the enhanced user experience. You can continue to use your existing Horizon Thin clients, or I guess not thin clients based on the poll from earlier. We've got specific optimizations for real-time audio video, including ones specifically for Microsoft Teams. And we've got adaptive protocols that kind of change, or that they adapt to maintain the user experience despite changing network conditions. And I half joke about how that's never been more important now that the end users are in control of their Wi-Fi. It was far different when IT was in charge of the Wi-Fi and the network in the office, but now the user installed their cable modem and their Wi-Fi router, and their kids are on Disney Plus. And so it's important to have a protocol that can maintain a good user experience across the board. And Pete, I think this gets into some deeper sort of value discussion here, but if I had one slide for this entire deck, the entire conversation about Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure, this would be it. This would be the one that says, this is why you need Horizon Cloud with WVD to give you everything you need. Where do you want me to go with this? Do you want to talk about this slide specifically, or is there?
Yeah, I think we got about 7 minutes left, so I want.
Yeah, I could talk all day. That's the thing.
Yeah. So I guess the highlight here is if you're to summarize, like, what's the primary driver in your mind? Like, we got this great summary here on the screen, but why Horizon Cloud on WVD? I mean, if you were to summarize in 3 points, what's going to get a customer to, if I said, so what, how would you answer that?
So I would look at it. Gosh, it depends on the use case or like the demand from the customer, but hybridity is important to me. Hybridity is something that Microsoft isn't doing with WVD. So if you're already a Horizon customer and you want to put workloads in Azure, hybridity is critical. Like I mentioned before, the choice of where you put the virtual desktops and apps is probably going to be based upon where the application data is, or where the users are accessing from, but probably a combination of those things. And so having the flexibility of hybridity to be able to put those desktops and apps wherever it makes the most sense for, user proximity to user and proximity to the data. I think that's crucial. If you're not already a Horizon customer and you're just kicking the tires on desktop virtualization in the cloud, or you're thinking about switching from another vendor or whatever the case may be there, looking at the overall speed at which this stuff can be deployed, those slides, the slide I showed at the beginning with those turnaround times, every single one of those customers was under a week to deploy thousands of desktops. And that's not a joke. I mean, like you said, there were some prerequisite times, but the actual deployment time was a week to deploy thousands of desktops. And so I realized that none of us are really in a reactionary phase anymore, but it would still be nice to get a project completed in weeks and not months.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess from a, cost perspective, and I think you have a slide that kind of highlights the cost, but if I adopt Horizon Cloud, I know roundabout what would it cost? I know you guys have, if my memory says, 3 great offerings, right? Yeah. And then 2, do I still need my on-premises license?
Sure. Okay. Let me hit it with this first, just to set up the cost conversation too, or give something to balance the cost against. You'll note on that other slide I showed, we save $3 a month in removing the need for third-party tools and $11 a month for management and cost optimizations. If you actually take that and apply it to an example, this is not a real customer. It's just an example of 1,000 user environments over 3 years. And this is the value above and beyond Windows Virtual Desktop. You can see all the areas where, how we made these calculations, but we can calculate about $500,000 worth of value over 3 years, which equates to about $14 per user per month. The cool thing about that is that the license doesn't cost $14 per user per month, which means we've already got, pretty quick ROI. The license options that we have to get access to Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure are these 3. There is Horizon Universal License, which is the most flexible license. It's the most expensive one too, of course, but that allows you to deploy multi-session operating systems. So Windows Server, RDSH, or if used with Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure, Windows 10 multi-session. Also, it allows you to do Windows 7 with the free extended security updates in Horizon Cloud. But it allows you to, apart from those 2 Horizon Cloud and WVD specific options, it allows you to deploy VDI and RDSH workloads in any environment. So we're on-prem, in the cloud, wherever you want. They all connect to the Horizon control plane. And because of all of the functionality here, it's the most flexible path to doing, desktop virtualization in a hybrid and multi-cloud way. So that's what we'd recommend for a customer that has on-premises VDI, but also wants to start taking advantage of Windows Virtual Desktop. We also have Horizon Apps Universal, which is like the Horizon Universal license in terms of full control plane capabilities with app volumes and DEM and things like that. But in this case, it only supports multi-session desktops and applications. So you can still deploy Windows 10 desktops in Horizon Cloud on Microsoft Azure, but they're coming from Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session, not VDI. So like published desktops, I guess, to put it in sort of a generic term. That license right there is about half the price of Horizon Universal. And on the right-hand side, we see Horizon Apps Standard. That's about half the price of Horizon Apps Universal. So now we're at a quarter of the price of Horizon Universal. And Horizon Apps Standard is about the same. We can still deploy published desktops and applications, but we're doing it from a single location. So no hybrid or multi-cloud capabilities. And it lacks a few of the control plane features like app volumes and DEM and things like that. But it still includes all the stuff that makes it extremely fast to deploy virtual desktops and applications from the cloud. It still includes universal brokering. It still includes DEM standard, and it does represent the lowest cost. Like it's under $5 a user by the time we get down to there. And so, obviously for all of these things, we need to reach out to local reps and things like that. But our goal is to have extremely flexible pricing to meet customers where they need to be, but also to have a logical path to add capabilities a logical upgrade path to add capabilities and the capabilities that are important to customers. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And so the far right, that's a great option if you're potentially looking to get your feet wet with WVD.
And you still get to deploy the blast protocol and things like that, so you still get the Teams optimizations and the adaptive transport and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, we kind of glazed over. Maybe that's a topic for another day, but the user layer is what makes this also extremely valuable. Like, I'm not knocking WVD. WVD as a platform is great, but let's face it, RDP and the RDP client that comes with WVD is still very behind even its own RDP client that's built into Windows 10. And we could probably spend another hour just talking about that. But the protocol is what's important here. And I like to call it the user interface. And I'll kind of summarize this in a minute when I give the value of why XenTegra and VMware. So,
well, and that's if you don't mind, I'll leave with this then, or and then I'll hand it back to you. Is that this is feedback from the field, from Microsoft field, even. Integrated power management solves problems that you have just doing stuff natively, but having this integrated into the Horizon control plane makes the admin's life easier. Being able to reconnect disconnected sessions instead of starting new ones. That's a feature that Horizon has that you don't get otherwise. And so, you as an admin don't have to go through and disconnect or kill off all these, disconnected sessions. And honestly, I was really, well, there's two other things. One is when you use native WVD, you also have to use Azure Active Directory. With Horizon Cloud and our ability to use WVD as part of that, you can use your Active Directory. We can support Azure Active Directory if you want to, but you don't have to use it. And so that means faster integration with your existing processes. So if you're not savvy with AAD, you don't have to be to deploy this. And the other thing that I thought was interesting from feedback wise over on rapid deployments here is that it was valuable to the customers that the end users didn't have to change their clients because there was no re-education of the end user for like, okay, here's your new client. Now you have to click over here or over here or over here if they were already Horizon users. So that was worth noting, I think.
Nice. Cool. So we're coming up to the top of the hour, but so I'll kind of close us out. But again, we could spend another hour probably going through some protocols and things like that. And hey, Gabe, let's plan another session maybe where we focus on the front end. But let's end cap with first off, if you have a question, get it into the Q&A dialogue because it does get recorded. And we can follow up with y'all after the session as well. I can get Eric pulled in. I can get Gabe pulled in. So definitely get your questions out there. It actually will help me decide. I used to run a workshop where I honed in on VMware and Horizon Cloud. I'm going to probably reintroduce that based on a lot of the questions we're getting. And spend a little longer time going through the nuts and bolts and getting a little technical. So keep an eye out for that. But ask your questions. And really quickly, XenTegra and VMware are great partners. And, we really focus on enabling you, the community. And Andy Whiteside, who's our founder and CEO, is really focused on not only giving you guys great products, but forming great solutions. So yeah, I can sell you VMware, but I don't care about just VMware. I care about building you a solution that makes sense. And so we're solutions focused first, and then we layer on our services and our products. So yes, I can sell anybody on this call VMware. We can get you up and running. We can do services, et cetera. So that's who XenTegra is. But more importantly, let's face it, without our end users, we all want to have jobs, and we need to make sure they're successful, because the last thing is we don't want them walking around and saying choice words about the technologies that we deploy. So we want to enable you, IT, so your end user can be successful. Because let's face it, without end users, we don't have jobs. And if they're unhappy, they're not going to like the products we deploy. All right, let's talk about bronco.xentegra.com. There's one cool way you can actually get put into this drawing. It actually plays very nicely into VMware. We do what's called a micro assessment. We have 2 micro assessments that we can bring to you, and they're free, and they're a 4-hour commit of your time. And you can do both. You can do one, you don't have to pick, but we do one that's EUC focused. So we assess your Horizon deployment, and we give you good anecdotes, and we do a SWOT analysis, if you will, of your environment. And then we do that one that's very hypervisor focused. So if you're just doing, vSphere, et cetera, and you can do both, you can do one, and we do these for free. So that's 2 ways you could get put into the Bronco drawing. I highly encourage them. It's a great way to get exposure to not only great partners, but also our process and how we work. I jokingly call it the XenTegra interview. It's a great way to get to know us. So some calls to action. If you want to dig deeper, definitely reach out. We can get you more information. I can get guys like Eric on the phone, and we can talk deeper about the different questions that came up today. We can go deeper in a demo. I have a full demo environment. I can show you how the nuts and bolts. And finally, we can come in and help you implement the various offerings. And as we close out, Gabe, we actually got a question, believe it or not, about your printer. So curious, what 3D printer do you have in the background?
That's funny. That's actually a 5 or so year old Wanhao i3. The Maker Select, or no, Monoprice Maker Select on Amazon is the same one that is. But there are plenty of far newer ones that have better firmware and stuff in there. So it's an i3. Look for an i3 printer. Those are pretty great. And they're easy to just use.
Cool. Well, hey, Gabe, thanks for joining me today. And I really appreciate you taking time out of your day. I'd love to have you on again, and we can dig deeper into maybe user-focused stuff next time. And Eric, thanks for jumping in and joining us today. Hope to see you on a topic. If you want to bring a topic to the table, please do. And thanks to all my panelists. Any last thoughts, Gabe, before we jump off?
Not really, Pete. You guys are a great partner, so we appreciate all this stuff, and for keeping us, letting us have, the ability to speak to your customers and stuff as well. This is really great. I like doing this. So yeah, looking forward to future ones.
All right, folks. Well, hey, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. And if you have any input or feedback, please do. I'm looking for topics. If you want topic ideas, I send a survey out after today's session. Next week, we got XenTegra on. If you don't know who they are, join to find out. Thanks for joining my webinar Wednesday this week. And as I always say, see you guys on the